I'm close to one right now, but... so Chris did ask me, and I really did want to say no, but here we are, so here we go. I thought at the beginning I'm going to tell you a bit about my journey where, you know, this past year, my whole life, I'm going to start at the beginning when I was a child. I was quite an accident-prone child. I wasn't the easiest of childs to have had. I was quite destructive as a child, sort of. I'll give you an example. When I was about 2, my mum had left a can of opened tinned red tomatoes on the counter on top of a cloth. And being a 2-year-old, I walked in and pulled the cloth, and the can of tomatoes fell on my face. And I actually have a scar here now today, but obviously because it was red tinned tomatoes, it did look a lot worse than it actually was. As we went to the hospital, people were like, she's got her throat open. No, it's just a little cut, it's just a little cut. When I was the same sort of age, I tried to make my escape out of the back garden. In our old house we used to live in, we used to have a little side gate. And my mum was to turn her back for a split second, and I escaped as, you know, a little 3-year-old. And luckily we didn't live on a busy main road. But that day a lorry decided to drive up the road as I was crawling the opposite way down towards this lorry. And luckily the lorry saw me and picked me up and brought me home, and obviously my mum opened the door to find a stranger with me in her arms, going, your daughter was just randomly crawling down the road, is she yours? And so my poor mum, she must have had a heart attack as well. But probably the worst and weirdest thing I did was when I was 6. My dad was making cement in the garden, and you know cement, you have to buy the dry cement mix. As a 6-year-old, I decided the best idea when I came across a bag of dry cement mix was to just get my face first. Who knows why? Luckily, my next-door neighbour saw and just screamed for my parents, and then my parents then came out to find their 6-year-old daughter with her head in a bag of cement. There you go. So my parents had a bit of a tough time with me because I was a bit sort of crazy, but my parents are amazing. They've been a massive influence in my life, especially for me and my 2 sisters. I've got 2 younger sisters, and my parents, they're both Christians as well, and they took us to church from, I know, since birth. And since birth, me and my sisters have been going to Dunchurch Baptist Church. And represent, I love my church. It's not a perfect church. I don't know if there is a perfect church. I don't think there is. But I do love my church, and I met some amazing people as I was growing up. And, you know, some of them are still my best friends today and will be, I hope, the rest of my life. And they are such an influence to me. But church for me was a bit weird because it was my parents that brought me along, so at what point did their faith become my faith? And I really struggled with, you know, when do I separate from my parents and it's me, not them dragging me along? And but that's the way it was for quite a long time, and it wasn't until a weekend away where one of our youth leaders took us away as a big group, and I was so happy because I thought it's a weekend with my friends, it's going to be great. But there I really experienced God. It wasn't like a big, powerful, fallen over experience or anything, but I just felt Him in my life, and I felt like He was with me, and I felt like I felt on top of the world, I really did. And my youth leader also gave me a verse at that time, which was from 1 John 15 verse 5, and she gave it to me because she thought it might mean something, that it might encourage me in some way, and it was 1 John 15 verse 5, it said, I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in Him will bear much fruit, for you can do nothing without me. And it really hit me, because at first I was like, well, I'm not a tree, I don't have vines, and I had no idea what was going on about it. And it wasn't until a few months later where a friend decided to sit down with me and go through it with me, and I started to understand it a bit, but it still didn't really make sense to me at all. And it wasn't until I went through high school, I went through my A-levels at Ashton, and I really struggled because I was sort of put in a load of really strong personalities, and I started to suffer with my own sort of, well, who am I, you know, what am I going to do in my life? And at Ashton they sort of, you know, said, oh, you've got to go to uni, you've got to go to uni, and I was like, okay. So I applied to uni and I had places to go last year, but it just didn't feel right, I just didn't feel like I had a purpose. I felt like I was sort of just walking with no direction. And it wasn't until this time last year when I was asked to do the Rock Solid Club at Dunchurch, where I started to think, well, maybe I could do this, maybe I could tell the kids about Jesus, and I was really got into it. I loved it. And then Ian asked me to be part of the YFC team, and I wanted to say no, because that meant that I'd have to do this eventually, stand here in front of you, and I really didn't want to do that. All this sort of, self-confidence all came up, whether I was worthy enough for it. I honestly didn't believe that God could use me in any way, because I just had no self-belief. And actually today, I'm not saying I do either. Just before this, I think I cried with Leah, because I was just so nervous. I honestly think, I thought I couldn't do it. And I'm standing here and I'm thinking, still can't do it. But it's not going so badly. And I think God, and looking back on this year, I wouldn't have said this throughout the year, but looking back on the year, I can definitely say God has had a hand on my life. He's definitely been preparing me, whether it would be for Spree last year, well not last year, but the Spree just gone, and I think he was preparing me for that as well. If you'd seen me on the first night at Spree, I forgot I had a voice, I forgot I could even move, because I was so nervous and blown away by the amount of kids that were there. And by the last night, all the guys would say that I was a different person, and I think I was, because I found a little bit of confidence that actually it wasn't about me presenting anything. It was about seeing these kids get to know God, get to see Jesus, and it was amazing. And I got past whatever confidence issues I had right there and then, and I gave it all to God. And it was a really good weekend. I loved it. But I think sometimes, especially with me, I try and solve my problems myself. Me and my family were quite good at just getting on with things. My dad's great at that, and I've inherited that. And it's not a bad thing to get on with things, but sometimes I forget to ask for help. I forget to ask people around me for help, but I always, most of the time, forget to pray, or I forget to ask God for help. And I think I really struggle with that. And last night, I was sort of reminded that we can actually go to God. Me and a few friends, we went to an ice hockey match, and while they were playing, everyone was shouting, "They're hitting and hoping, they're hitting and hoping." And because while they were playing, as they hit the puck, they would just hope that the puck would go somewhere near the goal. And they weren't really working as a team, they weren't passing to each other. And I think for me, and for all of us actually, sometimes we forget that we're on God's team. Actually, we can help, He can help us, and that we can pass to Him, and that He can be our hope, and He can make us get to that goal, our aim, whatever we're up to. He can actually help us. And I thought it was a really good analogy, because literally everyone was shouting, hitting and hoping, hitting and hoping. And I think we do that a lot. We hit and we hope, but we forget to say, actually, God's our hope. And I think that's all I sort of wanted to say. I know it was quite short, but amen. There you go.
You realised you were speaking for like 10 minutes. That wasn't short. That was fantastic. So well done. Brilliant.